Howdy folks, Jim Stringer here once again with TwangGuru Talk. Today my guest is Bill Kirchen. In an earlier episode, The Conversation, I said that these videos are like a conversation, but since I'm the only one that has a mic, I'm the only one that gets to talk. Well, today that's not the case. I had also said in an earlier video that I wanted to talk with other pickers, and in this video, I'm very fortunate to have a guitarist whose playing I really like and really enjoy, Bill Kirchen. Bill was, at least as far as I was concerned, the driving force behind Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen. It was a band that in the late 60s and early 70s coaxed many alienated fans, myself included, back into the world of country music, continuing the genre's legacy of great guitar pickers. In the intervening years between then and now, he's been a mainstay in various manifestations of roots-based music, whether with the Lost Planet Airmen or collaborating with pub rock icons such as Austin De Leon and playing, for example, on The Impossible Bird with Nick Lowe. He's also traded licks across the stage with Danny Gatton and Red Volkart, not for the easily intimidated. Now, in 1994, I was asked by the editors of No Depression magazine to review Kirchen's second release on the Blacktop record label, Have Love Will Travel. And that's right here. Have Love Will Travel. It's an assignment that I was very happy to accept. The only thing is, it's hard to confine yourself to a couple of hundred words when you like a record as much as I like that one, and all the ones that have followed. But I'd written about Bill's playing, guitar playing. I said, as always, the guitar work is superb. Unlike many guitar slingers, Kirchen resists the look ma, no hands temptation. So this video takes up just after Bill and I had been talking about the concept of being the best as a goal. Hint, you can't do it. So here's Bill Kirchen.
That was my master class, and you'll never be the best because I've been in bands with Danny Gatton and Red Volkart.
Yeah, there you go.
That'll if you try to compete, if I try to compete, I'm gonna lose. I just find out, try to remember what it is, why I'm there, what I do, and try to play that, and then things are okay.
What is it that you do as a guitar player? What do you see as your function as a guitar player?
Well, that's a good question. And I thought about that a little when you intimated that might come up. And I thought, well, I don't know. But I think what I try to do in different things, one thing I noticed, I had a gig, I did a sideman gig for one set with Eliza Gilkison. He's a great writer, actually a great guitar player too.
Yeah, I love her stuff.
Wonderful songs. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for her. And I realized that my job with her was just, as I put it, cheering her up. I don't know if I was really cheering her up, but that's what I thought about it. I thought I'm listening to the songs and I'm listening to her. And of course, she's real dark. Anyway, she's got a lot of dark content, very soulful, but she's not afraid to go for the deep stuff. And so I thought, well, my job here is just to kind of agree with her and encourage her, sort of. And it was fun to do that because I didn't know the songs we were doing. I was just playing on the fly, listening. So that was a good experience. It was actually fairly successful, I think, because I wasn't thinking about me. I wasn't trying to go, check this out,
Right.
And the other experience I had like that a long time ago with a hero, another fantastic professional, was when I went to make a record with Nick Lowe. And I'd already made a studio record with him where I was third chair to Dave Edmunds and Ry Cooder. I just didn't want to get thrown out. I was just trying to play rhythm and not screw anything up, But matter of fact, I went, when I first day on the job with that session, I borrowed my wife's sister's Martin D18, great Martin, to use, and I decided I better change my strings. I want to have brand new strings for the section. I opened the case, took all the strings out. The first thing that happened is the D string peg fell out of the guitar. It hadn't been used in a long time, and the wood had dried up. So I'm like, ah! Well, it stayed back in with the strength of the string, you know. But anyway, Nick invited me to make this record, which turned out to be The Impossible Bird with him. And I said, great, man, send me all the demos and I'll work up stuff. And he went, no, that's not how we're going to do it. I don't want you to do that. He said, if we do that, you'll make a meal of it. And I know what he meant. I'll be like, you know, guitar guy. And so he said, I just want us to be sitting in a room. We did. We sat around in a circle in a room and all played together. He said, I want us to be engaged with each other and playing together. And I had to sit there in a little chair, and I had a little tiny Gibson amp, and I played my telly with my bare hands because I just decided that's what sounded best. And I don't usually do that, but it's how I play at home, you know, bare-fingered. And it was very successful again, above what I would have done without that fantastic advice. You know, because I just was part of the job and listening rather than thinking about me.
Have you done much sideman work?
No,
you haven't
I
had
haven't.
to.
I've been a sideman for very few people.
When I asked a question on Facebook on my page, and I said, what was your first guitar? And almost 500 guitar players contributed a comment to it.
Wow.
So what was your first guitar?
A Harmony Sovereign, which I bought probably would have been 65, I'm guessing. And it was, I remember it was the lowest priced and best, you know, at the price point, as we say, solid top guitar you could get. Or I don't even know if they must have made plywood guitars. And it was $85 brand new Harmony Sovereign. I got a new Sovereign from Herb David's Guitar Studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which was Herb's a great, venerable, well-known luthier repairman.
I guess the question was, a lot of people had somebody that was important in their lives that, whether it was somebody locally like a music store, because that's the hangout, you know, that's the barbershop for guitar pickers. And so did you have somebody locally that was, for a lot of people, it's an older kid that had a band, you know, a garage band or professional player, somebody they meet?
Yeah, I did.
Can you pinpoint what it was for you?
In my life, yeah. And matter of fact, I'm friends with him today. His name is Pete Turin, and Tourin, and he was a couple years older than me in Ann Arbor. He was in college when I was in high school, and against all odds, somehow I found out about these guys. Three guys. They had all lived in D.C. and been part of that world that you know, knew about John Hurt and John Fahey and all that kind of stuff. So I would go to they would let me come to their apartment after school. And I can just imagine me coming up the driveway and they're looking out the window, going, oh God, it's that Kirchen kid again. Well, let him in, you know, they're so good to me. But he played guitar, and he also played viola da gamba and made harpsichords, and he had a BMW motorcycle. He put a VW engine in. He's one of those guys, just full of good stuff. He went on, he was in a band called, I think, Snowfall in Vermont, a bluegrass group, and now he plays Moravian music, and he's just a great guy. But anyway, he turned me on to fingerpicking acoustic guitar, and he played. He was good to me. He showed me how to play Mississippi blues, that thing you all had to learn, that blues and A by that guy Brown, what his name was, I forget his shoot. Why have I forgotten that? But a guy only put out one or two records in his life back in the 20s or 30s. So that was my guy, Pete Turin, and more, but he was the most helpful to me and the most encouraging and showed me the most.
Now I know you also play trombone.
Yes, sir.
Was trombone your first instrument?
Yes, 4th grade. Mm-hmm.
And I take it, like, since it was a school thing, that you had some, quote, formal training. So you learned how to read music and one thing.
Yes, I did. On trombone. When I went to bass clef, when I went to guitar, I took the lazy I don't know if it was really lazy, but I took the folk tradition, I should say, and never learned how to read. I learned strictly by ear at that point. And the only reason I ever did learn to read, I can still read slowly. I can read slowly now because for a while I taught, and I couldn't think of anything to do with this really good kid who was playing and hot on my tail learning anything I could show. I just, God, I got to do something. So I learned to read one page ahead of him in the Berkeley book. Book one. Never even been to Berkeley book two. Like, no.
Why are guitar players, among all musicians, so poor at sight reading? Now, I have a couple of friends that are really good, so I know it can be done.
Well, there's one reason we can cut us some slack for one reason. On a trombone, on the low notes, there's only one place they show up. As you get up the scale, you can find them in different places, but not that many, you get at the point where there's maybe 3 or 4, only 2 or 3 useful places to get any note on the high end. On a guitar, there's 6 strings. You can find that one note anywhere on the guitar, and you have all these different fingers. So there's so many more multiples of different possibilities for reading. It's a whole different problem. I say, cut us some slack.
That's the excuse I use, Bill. It's exactly the excuse I use. How has the formal training that you've had, and at least the knowledge of what the fundamentals of reading music, how has that helped you in your career, if at all?
Well, I don't know. I have one other idea about reading music, and that is that everything up until rock and roll came and guitar became the dominant instrument, up until that time, everything was diatonic, and
sure.
There was a complex harmonic structure involving, the first chords, you were only using scale tones, even with the notes of this, 1 6 minor, 2
right.
minor. Now, when the guitar came along, all bets were off, and it was played not in a way that was, there's so many things about it. The rhythm of a guitar, all that shuffle stuff doesn't lend itself well to Western music notation. You have to go read as if, at the top. And also the fact that all of a sudden all bets were off, and Louie, it's a 5 minor chord, for goodness sakes.
I know. It used to drive me crazy that bands would play that and play a major chord. It just drove me nuts.
I just had it out with a guy who wanted to sit in and insisted that we play the 4 chord and sleepwalk major. I'm like, no. We don't want to
bad guitar player. No biscuit.
So that's another way. The guitar really came into its own, not under the lash of Western notation.
The guys that were on records and stuff like that up until about 1950 or so, either they were good sight readers or they didn't get on the record. That's right.
Now, I'd like to say one thing, interject this one thing. I'm not against reading, because there's people who can read and can't read and are great and are not great, but nobody I've ever heard can read and wishes they didn't. So I don't even mean to disparage it at all. I'm trying to explain why in all people's lives, including mine, it took a backseat.
I couldn't play the songs that I've played for the last 50 years from sheet music. It would not happen.
And the other wonderful thing, though, is to hear a guy who can read and has incredible technique like Grady Martin.
Yeah.
With all their, and then hear him play on a Johnny Horton record. That's so cool.
One of my favorite. Well, I got a lot of. I tried to list my favorite guitar players at one point, and it's like when the list had reached 100. I was tired. Holy cow! We all have like the Hank Garland and Leon Rhodes and all these guys that who I think are just untouchable.
Right.
Who's a guitar player that you've heard in your life that not everybody knows about or hasn't been recognized the way that they should be?
Well, guy that not many people knew about, Phil Baugh, but he's on some big Burl Haggard records and stuff, but he didn't really get, I suppose, for a reason. Matter of fact, your buddy Charlie Burton wrote the liner notes on his second album.
What format do you enjoy the most? You played like the Commander Cody was a pretty big band. And then primarily the things you played during the time that I've known you have been trio or quartet made at the most.
I do like the trio thing is my favorite at this point in my life, and I don't exactly know why. I've just done it so much, and it's the ultimate free palette. I don't and I don't want to. It sounds funny to say it, but I don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing, really. And so and it also allows us. When I first started putting that together in DC, we had these regular club gigs, 3 sets a night, 3-hour sets, and a couple times a week, and then we'd go tour the country on weekends. But we would try any song if I knew a verse and a bridge, and I developed skills actually at putting together fake second verses that didn't exist in nature. But it was great because you can just sort of freewheel it and nobody gets hurt, Although that being said, I love playing with other people. I got a couple favorite people I play with. Austin Ballone, a great keyboard player, who's the guy that turned me on to Nick Lowe and started the pub rock scene in England with his band Eggs Over Easy back in the early 70s, the late 60s. And Bobby Black, the steel guitar player, who's in his 80s now and just one of the most fabulous musicians I've ever heard who happens to play steel. So I like doing the trio thing, but I'm open to suggestion.
You did the what was the thing with high tone with Red and
the Twang Bangers.
Yeah, Twang Bangers.
That was fun.
And
I do duo stuff with Red these days. It's a lot of fun. I just figure I got the best seat in the house to watch him.
That sometimes is a good deal, sometimes standing on stage is can feel like eternity and in purgatory, and other times it's just
best seat in the house.
You think, oh my God, I'm lucky to be here.
Yes,
that's what keeps me going.
Me too, man. I'm with you. I feel very lucky to be doing it. I always tell people, I said, well, nobody slapped the guitar out of my hands yet. Maybe get a job. So, not a word of this to anybody.
When you're, I want to ask, do you practice now?
Something, a little bit, but not much, I have to say. And I keep thinking in this pandemic and cloistering and social distancing and quarantine, whatever you want to call it, I keep thinking, well, I think I'll go learn jazz now. But it kind of hasn't happened. I did try, there's this Frank Vignola thing that put up that I decided to try to work my way through, and I'm just barely got my big toe in the water there. But anyway, that's I'm not really practicing now. I should be, but I'm not. No, I learned, actually, the time I did practice most was learning to read and going through the Berkeley book and trying to really maybe come up with a whole new kind of hand position in a way that I found valuable, especially now trying to play like things that you would hear a steel player do, or those guitar players like on the Luthen Brothers or with almost chord melody stuff, so that was really helpful. That era of practice to me really paid off in making my life more enjoyable.
Where do you draw the line between what you work out and reiterate on a gig versus what you do for spontaneity? Where's the line for you?
Man, that's a good question. I'm not sure I'm really even a good judge of where that line in the sand is, but I know that I have by now a bunch of stuff that I've played, and some of it I think I've learned on this. I'm sure a lot of it I've learned on the stage, because I haven't really sat down and worked up stuff that much for quite a while. So I think that also I like to leave room to be able to improvise. Now, when I say improvise, there's layers of that, and I know I've got some stock licks to get me in and out of trouble. You know, that like if I hear a melody, the goal is to be able to hear a melody and play it in your mind, and not be hidebound by what your fingers want to do because they did them yesterday. You know, that's a very, very difficult leap to make, and but. If I've answered the question, if I've successfully skirted the answer, I hope so.
No, that was
that
was a really good answer. How much of a self-critic are you? Do you generally feel good about your playing, or are you generally thinking, I wish I? How do you feel about it?
Well, that's a good question. And interestingly enough, you know, one place, which is the last place you and I played together, that I feel less critical about my thinking and most open and free is up there at Green Hall. And for some reason, just the kind of non-pressure environment, you know, people come in and maybe some percentage of them, probably not half, came to see me. The other half came in but seemed to be happy to be there, you know, or who knows what the percentage is. But and also I'm playing I get to play anything I want. If I think of a Buck Owens song or a Red Foley song or a Carol or something or a Nick Lowe song, I'll try to do it. And there I'm not that critical of what I do. I think I'm in the moment. It bugs me if I see a cell phone camera because no, I'm not doing this to make a record. I'm not trying to record this. I just want to be free and swinging, you know. So other places I'm more critical. I go down, I'm hypercritical to my detriment trying to record. And the worst thing that ever happened is they made that loop where you can press the space bar and keep recording takes. Matter of fact, my wife Louise has had to come into the room and stop me and say, stop. And she was dead right, because I was at take 85 and it had never been better than take 2, you know. But it's a compulsive thing, and that's my critic. And that's with songwriting, that's the same thing too. You got to still that critic. That critic, it's helpful to take an honest look at what you're doing, but in my mind, I would think of something and I would imagine the person most likely to be critical of it, or the person whose criticism I most valued. I'd imagine them hearing it, and that would just frighten the whatever creativity right out of me. Anyway, you know, I have to address that. I took home one cut. It's Bump Wood off of my Word of the Wise album. Might be side one, cut one. I really wanted to make a good guitar solo. It's kind of rockabilly, but it had odd numbers and measures. And when we cut the track, somehow the odd measures weren't intuitive, and they ended up really odd, you know, with capital O. And I constructed a perfect solo on that, and it's got a lot of pieces to it, and it's only lasts 15 seconds, but it has a lot of patches. By the time it was done, you can't tell. It was nothing I couldn't play live, and I could duplicate it live. But I swear to God, there is something wrong about that solo. And somehow, by me putting it together so well, something got lost, you know. And so to me, there's intangibles like that. I mean, various people have theories about that. Brian Wilson, I've heard say, you know, thought that just the simple fact of headphones, the fact that the music travels faster through that than it does in the air, ruined everything. All electronic tuners, where you're not tuned to you're using a tempered scale, that ruined everything. So there's intangibles there, and that was an example of me striving for perfection by assembling a flawless take. I mean, it sounds good, and I, you know, and I don't know, there's something in it that I can hear that's amiss. It doesn't have that thing that makes
how good does a player have to be to contribute to the legacy? And do you have like a couple of examples?
Okay. Link Ray, very influential.
Bingo.
And good,
That was on my list.
yeah, bingo, you know, and I got to meet him and play with him, and I saw him. We did a gig on the same show with him, not too long before his death, about whenever that was, 10, 15 years ago. But and he was, but good. He was really good. I mean, case in point, everybody's still trying to play like him, but he was not good in the modern, you know, classically trained sense or what. But so that's a good question, and as I mentioned earlier, some of my favorite primitive licks were played by guys who were not primitive guitar players, taking case of point. But a guy like Bo Diddley, what he did so well, you know. And there's blues guys with a limited palette of notes who just have such drive and heart in their playing. It sounds to me like they're incapable of playing a wrong note. And guys like Freddie King, you know, who B.B. King had more, you know, jazz chops maybe and stuff, who's fantastic. You can't argue all those the three Kings. You can't, silly time trying to say who's better. But Freddie had this, he was the rock and roll king in many ways. And I don't mean to suggest that he wasn't good, but he was an example of a guy with a technique that went X number of, you know, things, who was just deadly. People, when he influenced all those English guys so much, who in turn invented rock, you know, and so unbelievable. So, you know, I don't know, it's a good question. Then you got guys like Tommy Emmanuel, who everybody loves him, and he's unbelievably good.
Yeah.
He's just stunningly, ridiculously, jaw-dropping.
How is your life as a musician, and in particular as it applies to being on the road, or just life as a musician and how music plays in your life? How has that affected your personal relationships throughout your life?
Well, it's against all odds, our marriage has survived, you know, I certainly won't take much of the credit for that, but we've been married since 74, you know, which is quite a while. So it's survived, but it's taken its toll too. But on the other hand, sometimes I think if Louise had to put up with me, I mean, all of a sudden now she has to put up with me essentially 24/7, which I have to put up with me 24/7, and it's no picnic, you know. So, but sometimes I think, well, at least, you know, I wasn't underfoot that whole time. But well, that's all I want to say is our marriage has survived, and I also, you know, the whole lifestyle and I did a fair amount of drugs and alcohol, which is no secret if you listen to our Commander Cody songbook that we wrote. Down to Seeds and Stems again, took 3 bennies, wine to your stuff, you know. But and I was able to stop that quite a long time ago, you know, half my life ago, 36 years ago, which I think, had I not, I wouldn't even be talking to you. I don't think I could have sustained any of this, probably not life itself, much less a career on the road. So that was a big change back then, in which luckily I discovered that I liked playing music sober, which I would exactly share back there in 84 if I would, but it turned out it was way better, you know. So anyway, we're here today. And also I've made a lot of friends through this. Speaking of personal relationships, other than the family, I've made a whole lot of valuable friends. I count you among them, through music. And that's been very rich, I think, enriched both of our lives. And I think I know to a certain extent that I can say at least that some of the circles of people that I've found through music have embraced Louise as well, and she's found a big place in them, become their friends, you know, and not just my friends. And So that's it's been a great life in that sense.
What was the process? Did you write it together, or did you write it in pieces apart and then unify it, or?
Well, she had that line, I know, at least, and I think maybe even a lot of the whole chorus. And then, but we've actually written a whole bunch of songs, and three of us in a room, and somebody has something to start with. Oftentimes Sarah, but and then we worked it out. There's a song that the three of us started that Louise ended up working long and hard on her own called Consolation Prize. It's not been recorded or anything yet, but as we've done well, just face to face, the three of us in a circle. That's been very valuable. I tend to write songs with lyrics first, and then I try to, because to me it's easy to put a melody on something, but coming up with lyrics, that's when you got to silence the critic for openers, and then press on. I did that on one song because I intended to record a cover song, a cover tune on one of my early albums on Blacktop, I think, and I was going to cover Keys in the Mailbox. And I'd recorded it with Buddy Charlton on steel guitar from and I got home and I realized I'd screwed up one of the chords, which I don't like to do, one of the changes was wrong, didn't hold the 5 or whatever it was. So I decided to go home, and we already had a track with the rhythm section and Buddy Charlton doing, fills and stuff. So I made basically a crossword puzzle out of it. And I took the meter of Keys in the Mailbox and the changes that I had done, which were very much like Keys in the Mailbox. It's a country shuffle. And I wrote a song called Which Came First, the Heartache or the Sad Song. And I had to use, the same metric, the poetic feet of the lyrics to make them fit with the fills and stuff. But that was fun. It was a good job. It was a good, thing to try, like trying to do a New York Times crossword puzzle.
What do you see as the difference between your playing now and when you were young?
It was better then when I was young. I don't know, man. I know I did a lot of just duplicating stuff. I learned finger picking stuff, and I would just try to play it just like the record. And with the early Cody band, I think I probably constructed more solos or stole them, like the Hot Rod Lincoln lick. I stole, or I tried to, off of the Johnny Bond version, which was only 10 years old at that point in time. And we didn't even get the chords right, much less the lick. And it was, to me, I've always said it was originality born of incompetence. And I actually like mine better now than the lick from the Cody record, better now than the original of it by Johnny. Probably Joe Maphis with John. I don't know who it was, but somebody like that. I don't know. I'm skirting the issue. I don't know what the difference is.
If that's a good enough answer, it's if there's for me personally, I played a lot more complicated things at one point that I listen to now. And I think, what the heck was that?
That's true of me too. There's a middle period where I was, overdoing it and thinking I needed to do this and that, which I like way better what I played either earlier on or later on, but not in that middle. I agree with that completely.
But I feel like age in my place has made me a better player, a better musician.
I know it has me too. I know it has.
Even though possibly not technically, it's
just more more thoughtful.
Once again, Bill, I'll hopefully get a chance to be in the same room with you soon. So, okay, Bill, I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.
I don't know how you get that way.
I don't know how to end it.
It's supposed to say leave meeting. Where's leave meeting?
I got one over on the right-hand side. It's a big red button that says end. So I'll click it now.